So now we have a system of putting together characteristics of verbs and showing subtypes of the events that they can be classified into. So we can look at what the verbs actually require of their participants here. These requirements are called lexical entailments. They're the entailments that the verb enforces on its arguments. And we've already seen this a couple of times in class. So the verb will require of its participants certain particular characteristics. And we've seen this in the murder versus kill examples, where murder requires that its subject position argument, here going to be Jim, have certain characteristics. And in murder, somehow Jim has to be more agentive. In other words, he has to be intentional. Whereas in kill, Jim doesn't have to be intentional at all. And one of the ways that we can see this informally is that if we say the falling branch killed Sally, this is completely fine. But if we say the falling branch murdered Sally, all of a sudden that becomes infelicitous. So there's obviously something about intentionality and the fact that only humans can be intentional, or at least falling branches can't, such that the first sentence here is infelicitous and the second sentence is not. And these are requirements that the verb has put on its arguments, NP1 and NP2. So we'll come back to this because first we want to clarify some terminology. Generalized rules are going to be these common semantic rules of participants which are required by events or states. So these are often rules that we see repeating in various classes of verbs. They're also notably distinct from what we see here, proto-rules and proto-properties. They're not always syntactically expressed, and we'll see several cases where some arguments are optional syntactically while quite obviously semantically present. So an important generalized rule is going to be the agent. This is the intentional cause. We saw the difference between this and just a cause in our kill versus murder example, where kill requires only that its killer participant be the cause and not necessarily intentional. Murder, in contrast, requires the killer to have intent. So whether the killee had to be intentional actually was debated in class, but at the very least, the killee or the killer in murder must be intentful. So this was the question, is meat murder? The cause then is going to be a crucially non-intentional cause. As in, the molten lava burned down the village. Here, the molten lava is the cause. These are also approximate rules, so they're used to express very particular cases sometimes. We can see how any arbitrary degree of complexity could be used to talk about these rules, such that this list could potentially become unnecessarily large. Fortunately, we have a solution and a predictable way to look at how arguments are positioned with respect to the verb, at least syntactically. With some influence from the semantics. So these are our proto-rules. But we have a few more that are actually useful generalized rules. So the patient or the theme is going to be usually a thing acted upon. affected or moved. This is also going to be our default non-agent role. So this is our hittee, the thing hit. We'll also see that things moved, such as in verbs of transfer, are themes. Themes are sort of like a default role for things that we don't quite know what to do with that aren't obviously agentive sometimes, or causative. So in verbs of travel and transfer, such as send, give, mail, and fly, the sender or mailer is going to be the source or the starting point. In a verb of travel, the source is still the starting point, but the traveler is not that point themselves, but is going from the source to the goal and is itself conceivably an agent. The goal, as I already mentioned, will then be the endpoint in a traveling event, or potentially the recipient or beneficiary in a verb of transfer. This is going to be the givee or receiver of the giving event. In other verbs, we call participants which are used to complete that event an instrument. So this is going to be the fly swatter in Jill killed the fly with the fly swatter, where the fly swatter is the instrument. Similarly, in the sentence, I sealed the wound with gauze, gauze is the instrument. Often, as we can see from this pair, the preceding preposition will regularly indicate what semantic role is fulfilled by the participant in the prepositional phrase. So, if Jill killed the fly with the swatter, and I sealed we can see here that the prepositional phrase using the preposition with is often and predictably going to give us the instrument. The experiencer is going to be the participant experiencing a cognitive state or emotion as a result of the event or state. So this is going to be something like in the sentence, Bobby felt a great deal of pain on his left arm. Bobby is the experiencer.